Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic. You are sent back to the day the Titanic set sail with nothing but a third-class ticket, and food, water etc. Your task is to stop the Titanic from sinking. How do you do this? Get the fucking binoculars. Funny story, there were binoculars on the Titanic, but at the time they were incredibly valuable, so much do that they were kept in a locked strong box when not in use. The guy with the key to the binoculars was transferred off the Titanic a week before its maiden voyage, and he mistakenly took the keys with him. Did he get in any trouble for walking off the ship with the keys? Get a hammer from somewhere, or maybe just a fucking rock, and smash open that cabinet. Unless you brought a rock with you, you may have trouble finding one on the Titanic. Wait until the day of sinking, raid the watchtower, knock out the watchman and ring in the iceberg, right ahead 2 minutes earlier. You don't even need to raid the watchtower, just wake him up, and point at the iceberg's direction. That's not an iceberg. You are imagining things. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Except that the guys weren't asleep, and there was no iceberg to point to. If you read the accounts, the only reason they knew anything was in front of them at all was because they saw a spot where there were no stars. The ocean was so calm there weren't even any breakers at the base of berg. You could point out the lack of stars sooner though. Pour custard into the sea. On a serious note, I wouldn't stop the Titanic from sinking as it led to major changes in safety on ships. So the actual Titanic sent a distress signal 25 minutes after it hit the iceberg at 23:40. So signal sent at 00:05. The Titanic then sunk at 2:20 and the RMS Carpathia was a massive ship that arrived first on the scene at 4 o'clock. 1 hour 40 after the Titanic sunk, and saved 712 people that were on lifeboats, but obviously many died in the sea. So what I would do is send a distress signal to RMS Carpathia. Except I would send the distress signal at 20:30, i.e. before the Titanic hit the iceberg, then let the Titanic hit the iceberg, and then RMS Carpathia would arrive at roughly 00:30, which give or take is when the Titanic definitely knew she was sinking, and sent its original timeline distress signal, so the Titanic would definitely load its passengers on RMS Carpathia, giving them just under 2 hours to do so before the Titanic sunk. So yeah, everyone saved, but major safety changes would have been made to ships going forward. And just for fun I'd scroll paint me like one of your French girls, so when future subs go down and film the Titanic people will be like WTF does that mean? But time travelers would understand the reference. D. Edit. Thanks for all the awards guys. Chaotic good answer. RMS Carpathia radios back when they hear the distress signal. The radio operator on board the Titanic is confused, but confirms that she is not sinking. When the actual distress signal goes out, it is ignored by Carpathia. 712 extra people die. Easy fix, destroy the radio after you send your signal. Given the size of radio transmitters in those days, it wouldn't be a radio transmitter you brought on board. In any case, all you had was a third-class ticket. You would have instead commandeered, tied up the radio operators and locked them away, the radio room anyway, and be in charge of the radios. So you would confirm she was sinking. Wasn't this the plot of a IIT's PC game? There was something about Serbia and Turkish baths and a notebook. I feel like I'm describing a dream. Also one of the endings has you taking a painting off the ship, which turns out to be a painting by Hitler and leads him to becoming a successful painter instead of the other thing. You had to fix several things to get the good ending. Apart from the painting you also had to secure a notebook that would otherwise get Archduke Ferdinand killed. And there were probably more. Maybe some jewelry. To be honest I've forgotten. Titanic, adventure out of time. Never could find those fucking binoculars. That's the one. Thanks. That game creeped me out for absolutely no reason. I read a Choose Your Own Adventure Titanic book when I was younger. If I remember correctly, the early ending choice was to use your binoculars to point out the iceberg and to convince the captain to divert the ship. So that. Do you turn your third-class tickets or your food into binoculars? Titanic tickets were highly sought after, so you'd just trade your ticket for a pair of binoculars. Duh. I sit. I wait. 3 minutes and 24 seconds before anticipated collision, I hand the string quartet 4 pages of sheet music and they play. The guests will hear, for the first time, My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. I tell them that their deaths will bring about the most beautiful song ever written. As confusion sets into the crowd, the song crescendos to the apex exactly as collision takes place. I survive because I pushed some bimbo off a floating door who wouldn't even share it with her boyfriend. Perfection. Don't forget to snatch her necklace first. Profit. I trade some of my food for a paperclip. I'd then trade the paperclip all the way up to a house. Once I had the house, I'd sell it and buy a shit ton of paperclips. I'd trade these up to houses and sell those houses to buy more paperclips. Eventually I'd have enough money to buy the Titanic. I'd order the captain to change course and save the ship. Then I'd sell the Titanic and buy a paperclip. Instead, you'll end up trading the Titanic for a small pack of magic legumes. I can always just buy a Titanic. The second officer, ranked just below the captain, for the ship was replaced right before the ship left the harbor. This was the guy with keys to the storage room where the binoculars were stored. So on the fateful evening the watch crew could only see as far as the naked eye would allow, hence not enough time to adjust course once they spotted the iceberg. So I'd get that second officer to hand off the keys to the next guy in charge. I'd also stay in London because you never know. Pretty fucking smart. You could also take out some crazy odds gambling that the ship would sink by iceberg at a precise timestamp and make millions. If you stayed in London you wouldn't be able to do anything, because the Titanic was never in London. Well, you never know, better to be in London than in Southampton, from where the Titanic set steam. Take a shed load of muscle relaxats, take a deep long breath, shove the entire Titanic up my ass. Why me, why my post? You gotta admire his confidence though. If I remember correctly, they could have avoided the iceberg as they already knew about them. The radio crew of the Titanic was warned about the giant icebergs, but they failed to notify the bridge captain's area where they steer and handle operations of the ship about it. So I just grabbed their reports and let the captain and the bridge know about it sternly. https://www.history.com/news/Titanic-on-trial. Probably the most serious response so far. I appreciate you not telling me you were going to shove the Titanic up your ass. Oh, that was the plan. If rational thinking fails, they'd probably turn the ship around if I keep running around trying to butt-fuck everything in sight and say I can't control myself and spread rumors about a fake virus that makes you do so. I want to see a movie based on the answers in this thread. Titanic 2. Put this big ship in your ass. Titanic 3. Staring the crackheads of Reddit. BCYTF not. Claim there's a bomb or a murder on the ship to prevent it from setting sail in the first place. Judging by the fact that you are in third class, if they would listen, great idea though. If they don't listen, I'll murder them out of spite. Just to prove a point. First I would save a sexy first-class passenger from committing suicide, then I would draw said first-class passenger naked. After that we would have steamy hot sex in the back of someone else's wagon. Later that night I would go and speak to the captain dressed up as if I was a first-class passenger and bribe him with the drawing of the sexy first-class passenger and a sniff of my fingers to steer the ship 2 degrees south on our voyage. Boom. Disaster averted. I go back and find my sexy first-class passenger. We have sex all over the ship until we reach port in New York City. She finds out she's pregnant and we live happily ever after with a huge diamond necklace. I just realized the drawing was probably fairly valuable in that they didn't have porn back then, really. Till patrio porn artists would have hell over living back then. They had photography in 1912, and you can bet there was pornography almost as soon as there was photography. You have to get them to change course or slow way the fuck down at some point before impact. As a third-class passenger, the fastest and most surefire way to do this is 10 minutes before impact to chuck someone over the railing and call out a man overboard. The ship turns around for them, or at least takes all way off and drops a rescue boat, and the iceberg floats on by. If after all that and the ship gets back on course the iceberg is still in the way, at least the ship doest hit it at ludicrous speed. Pretty much this. All you need to do is slightly change where the ship was at the time of the collision. It was an incredible coincidence in the first place. You could do this anytime, maybe bump the captain with a bucket of paint so he has to get changed before they leave port. Maybe find a way to turn the ship around and waste some time, maybe find a way to angle the ship a few fractions of a degree off course so they need to course correct at a later stage. The butterfly effect is a powerful thing. I love how this involves actually throwing a man overboard as opposed to just yelling man overboard. Spray the hull with Flex Seal. Take back a DVD player and a TV and a copy of Titanic, and wow the captain with my magical technology from the future. Also, buy Bitcoin. Bad idea. The crew will argue whether or not there was room for Jack on the floating debris. The crew, distracted by the argument, won't have time to avoid the iceberg. Tell the captain someone had just lowered his thermostat on the mainland. I would hope the captain had push notifications on his Ecobee enabled.